Beneath the Bloody Ridge, a tribute to the 16th Alabama and Private James Gibbs. We're here today to bear witness to courage without spotlight, to sacrifice without reward, and to a soldier whose name may not appear in our history books, but who etched his loyalty into the very soil of his country. Private James Gibbs, a name pulled from the age pages of muster rolls and pension files. He was not a general or a strategist. He held no titles, led no battalions, but what he gave was something rarer than medals. He gave everything. He marched with the 16th Regiment, Alabama Infantry, a unit forged in the crucible of 1861, drawn from the hills and hamlets of Alabama. Together, these men faced some of the bloodiest crucibles of the American Civil War, and one of the fiercest was Chickamauga.
To the Cherokee, Chickamauga means river of blood. For 2 days in October of 1863, the Chickamauga more than lived up to its name. For the men who survived, Chickamauga would be remembered as one gigantic brawl, bushwhacking on a huge scale in the vortex of hell. It was the great Western engagement of the Civil War, the Battle of Chickamauga.
In April 1863, under thick forest canopy and blistering fire, the 16th fought with ferocious resolve. Outnumbered, undersupplied, exhausted, they held the line. One of these 414 men who stepped into the maelstrom of Chickamauga, nearly 60% did not walk out, but they did not falter. That battlefield was more than a clash of armies. It was a testament to will, to duty, and to the quiet valor of men like James Gibbs. He may not have left behind letters or portraits, but he left behind something deeper, a legacy of resilience etched in cannon smoke and pine soil. The legacy of the 16th Alabama is not confined to a strategy or statistics. It's lived through generations, the kind that teach their children that honor lives not in fame, but in standing one's ground when the world is crumbling. To James Gibbs and to all the silent sentinels who stood, fell, and bled beside him, we remember you, not as ghosts of a past war, but as guardians of valor. May we carry your memory, not just in words, but in the way we confront our own trials, with courage, with duty, and with unshakable resolve. The steel in the soil, the story of the 16th Alabama Regiment, the call to arms. We begin this story in the summer of 1861 in the quiet town of Portland, Alabama. The air was thick with uncertainty, but also with resolve.
Originally assigned to Braxton Bragg's Army of Tennessee, the unit was sent south to Vicksburg in an effort to save that city. With the fall of Vicksburg, everyone knew the next goal for the Federals would be Chattanooga, and Bragg would need every man he could get to hold it.
Bragg was a very good logistician, very good disciplinarian, and a good strategist. But when things started going the wrong way, other things develop, he finds it very hard to change his plans to go with the flow of what's going on.
Captain. That strength of tie, that unity that should exist between an Army commander and his subordinates was always lacking for Braxton Bragg. Unfortunately, because Bragg's men were good soldiers and his officers' corps were good men, but that leadership component always seems to be weak in these Western Confederate armies.
George.
Confronting Bragg's army was the Union Army of the Cumberland. To Army Commander William Rosecrans, the goal was simple: pry the Confederates off the Cumberland Plateau, force a battle on the open ground beyond, and capture Chattanooga, a vital Southern rail hub and the key to the Union advance on Atlanta.
From the counties of Russell, Lauderdale, Lawrence, Franklin, Cherokee, and Marion, men gathered not as conquerors, but as defenders of what they believed to be their homes, their honor, and their way of life. The 16th Alabama Infantry Regiment was born on August 6, 1861, a patchwork of farmers, blacksmiths, teachers, and sons. They were not professional soldiers. They were neighbors, and yet they were soon to be forged into one of the most battle-hardened units in the Confederate Army. Under the early leadership of Colonel William Wood and later Colonels Helvenston and Ashford, the regiment was assigned to brigades under Generals Zollicoffer, Wood, Lowry, and Shelley. Their journey would take them across the South from the hills of Tennessee to the forests of Georgia and finally to the bitter end in North Carolina. But before the first shot was fired, they trained, they drilled, and they learned to march in step and fire in unison. And they learned to say goodbye to wives, to children, to the lives they once knew. Their baptism by fire. The 16th's first taste of combat came at Fishing Creek, Kentucky, under General Zollicoffer. It was a harsh awakening. 64 men were lost in that early clash, a sobering reminder that war was no romantic adventure. Then came Shiloh in April of 1862. The 16th was very warmly engaged, suffering 162 casualties. The fields of Tennessee ran red, and the regiment learned what it meant to fight in the teeth of chaos. At Murfreesboro, they lost 168 men. At Chickamauga, they entered the fray with 414 men and lost 59% of their number. That's not a statistic, it's a heartbreak. It is a company commander watching his line vanish. It's a drummer boy silence. It's a flag bearer falling, only for another to rise in his place.
For 2 months in the summer of 1863, the Union Army of the Cumberland outflanked and outmaneuvered the Confederate Army of Tennessee. They captured Chattanooga and crossed the Tennessee River. But the long rebel retreat was ending. Heavily reinforced, the Confederates turned now to meet the enemy near Chickamauga Creek in northwestern Georgia. Confidence surged throughout the army, from the privates all the way up through the commanding officer.
Soldiers, you are largely reinforced. You must now seek the contest. Our cause is in your keeping. Your enemy boasts that you are demoralized and retreating before him. Failure is impossible, and victory must be ours. Braxton Bragg, General Commanding Army of Tennessee.
What Bragg wanted to do was to get his army in between the Union Army and Chattanooga, and then attack the Union left flank and drive the Union Army south and southwestward and crush them against the mountains to the south and west.
Bragg had one day, September 18th, to accomplish his goal: destroy the Union Army before it could be brought together. Complicating things for the Confederates was Chickamauga Creek. There, small Union details took positions at the bridges and fords and held up the Confederates until it was nearly dark.
Missionary Ridge and through the Atlanta campaign, where they lost another 200 men. At Jonesboro, 150 more fell. And in the brutal winter of 1864, they marched for General Hood into Tennessee, where the battles of Franklin and Nashville nearly destroyed them. Every officer was lost, and half the regiment was disabled. In April of 1865, the war was all but lost. The Confederate lines had crumbled. The cities had fallen. The cause, whatever one believed it to be, was in its death throes. And still the 16th Alabama stood.
The rebels are in our front, and we may have to fight a battle. If we do, it will apt to be a big one. Do not be uneasy for me. I am well and in good spirits, and trusting to my usual good luck. My love to the children. Goodbye, my darling. Your own, Hans.
Even though the Union Army was now concentrated, Bragg's plan for September 19th remained unchanged. He continued to move his forces to the north, looking for a way to get around the Federal left. Rosecrans countered by moving Union General George Thomas's 14th Corps up the Lafayette Road to block him. Both sides were expecting a fight, and any sudden contact would touch it off. With 2 of his divisions at hand and more on the way, Thomas moved cautiously forward and ran headlong into dismounted cavalry under Confederate Brigadier General Nathan Bedford Forrest.
At Goldsboro, North Carolina, a mere 50 men remained. From this original 867, from the thousands who had passed through its rank, only a handful were left to surrender. They laid down their arms, not in shame, but in exhaustion. They'd given everything.
One Union brigadier compared the combat to a vicious brawl, a mad, irregular battle very much resembling guerrilla warfare on a grand scale, in which one army was bushwhacking the other. With both sides rushing units to the front, the Battle of Chickamauga would soon become one of the bloodiest conflicts of the Civil War.
Their unit was consolidated with the 1st and 45th Alabama Regiments, and the banner of the 16th was furled for the last time. But their story did not end there. What is the legacy of the 16th Alabama Infantry? It is not in monuments or medals. It is in the soil of 6 states where their blood was spilled. It is in the letters home, the pension records, the cemetery stones etched with fading names. It is in the descendants who still walk in the hills of Alabama, carrying the memory of men like Private James Gibbs, who fought not for glory, but because he was called. Their legacy is complex. It is tangled in the politics of their time, in the tragedy of a divided nation. But it is also human. It is the story of endurance, of brotherhood, of sacrifice. And my original maiden name is Gibbs. So I chose that name because that's my maiden name. They were not perfect men, but they were resolute. They were loyal, and they were brave. So let us remember them, not as symbols, but as souls. Let us speak their names. Let us tell their stories. Let us walk the fields where they once stood and then whisper, "You are not forgotten." Because in the end, the legacy of the 16th Alabama Infantry is not just about war. It is about what it means to stand for something, to endure, and to be remembered. So thank you for taking a walk with me and looking at the 16th Alabama Infantry. Have a great day, guys.